Okay, so let's look at how we perceive things, perception. Let's say you're an academic and you study Buddhism. Everything you study is an intellectual overlay on what the Dharma represents. So between the consciousness, the Dharma itself is an intellectual layer. So whenever you look at the Dharma, you'll see your intellectual layer, you won't see the Dharma. Now, if you want to move this filter from the mind of the academic to the mind of the Buddha, you have to mentally transfer into the Dharma itself, practice it, and experience it. So basically, the only authorities on Buddhism are people who have attained Nibbana. They're the only ones that can understand karma. So if anybody stands up academically and says, no, this is what the Buddha said, this is the way it is, but they have not attained to Nibbana, they're in a state of ignorance, and they're actually more ignorant than the general public about the Buddha because of the reinforced layers of intellect in their mind's relationship to practice. Now, if you look at many of the arahants that have attained, let's say in Thailand, these aren't educated people. They don't read books. These people practice. They practice vipassana, they watch the thoughts rise and fall away, they generate separation, so emotions have no place to rest in their mind. What happens? They release and the mind ascends, they touch Nibbana. And it's only after they've touched Nibbana that they actually look at, how am I going to share this with people? How am I going to relate this information to others? And then they'll construct phrasing to share the knowledge. They don't study first, they study later. This is the difference between an ignorant academic who thinks they know everything about Buddhism and an arahant who knows a lot about Buddhism. An academic will do a little bit of practice, then they'll go to a book to read to understand the practice, and they reinforce ignorance. A practicer will practice, then they'll look into their own practice to find the answers and how to practice better through more practice. They don't turn to a book. They don't turn to ignorance, to reformatting this intellectual layer of they think they know everything. They simply release on it. So what happens when you study? You reinforce attachment. What happens when you release? You let go of attachment. So to get to the heart of any spiritual knowledge, you need to release. This releasing process gives truth. And this is what teaches you the Dharma. And that's why what the Buddha actually taught is so simple. Nibbana is a release of attachment, aversion, delusion, and the heart is in the word release. How do you let go of things that are sticking to your mind? Reading a book about Buddhism certainly is not going to help you let go. So you only need a fundamental knowledge of how to practice Buddhism. You don't need to have a complex, deep knowledge. And to be honest, the more complex your understanding of Buddhism is, the more ignorant you actually are, because you're not releasing. Do you spend more time reading or more time practicing? This is a measurement of practicer versus ignorant academic. Now, we need academics because they can keep the tradition in shape. They can keep all the systems organized, but they're like librarians. We really need them. But do you really want to learn from someone who has no idea what release actually means, to release attachment, aversion, delusion, to attain Nibbana? Or do you have someone who wants to just talk about numbers and sutras? What I've noticed is that if you jump on any forum where there's high-level academics, you have very low-level Buddhism. They're so invested in their view that they actually don't know what they're talking about. Their understanding of Buddhism is limited at best. So, release. Now, if we take the psychology of how the mind perceives things in day-to-day life, it's going to run through these filters. You look at a person walking down the street, your mind will frame them, male, female, race, culture, country that they're from. It will overlay all the data they've got about that and their emotional relationship to that, and they'll unconsciously judge that person. And this same thing is happening on dharmas. The person who's an academic will view everything through the intellectual framework, and they'll reinforce ignorance within themselves, thinking they know everything when they actually know nothing. If you want to know something about spiritual work, master release. Release, 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 release. That's the essence. If your mind is constantly touching things, it's becoming dirty. If your mind is constantly releasing things, it's becoming clean. So are you a person who releases, or are you a person who dirties yourself by attaching to view? Remember, the stage of no view in Buddhism is where things start to happen. Move to that stage of no view as quickly as possible. Get a mind map, the fundamental teachings of Buddhism on the wall, and then start practicing and releasing on each of the teachings to get to the heart of it. So whether you're seeking to attain universal consciousness, whether you're seeking to attain Nibbana, whether you're seeking to come into union with Jesus Christ, all these fundamental principles are based on release. To release the resistance between where you are now and where you want your mind to be in the future. So you put your mind on the goal and release on it, and resistance between your mind is, and that goal dissolves, and you achieve that goal. So this principle of release can be applied to a multitude of things. It's very, very, very important to understand this is the essence of all spiritual work. It doesn't matter whether you practice ritual magic, it doesn't matter whether you practice Taoist alchemy. Releasing allows your mind to move energy between two places, to release the old place and transform to a new place. So this principle is the essence of all spiritual work. Okay, we'll leave it there, and thanks for your time. See you in the next video.